Hi everyone, welcome to the lab on plant evolution. Today we're in the greenhouse and Jacob, one of the TAs, is going to give you an awesome tour and you're going to be doing a scavenger hunt with him, but I am going to be showing you about plant evolution. So in your homework, you've got a tree that looks like this and you're going to be putting in different characteristics based on when they evolved. So here are the different characteristics that you've got. I'm not going to put them in order, but you've got, there we go, flowers, cuticle, vascular tissue, pollen, spores, true leaves, and fruit. So before we start talking about our bryophytes, which are evolved about 443 million years ago, we're going to talk a little bit about green algae. So green algae are green, which means that they have chlorophyll, okay? And they have chloroplasts, and that is one of your characteristics. So that would be before the green algae. Eventually, plants started growing on the earth, and so they needed to have some adaptations. So the moss and all bryophytes and everything beyond this has a cuticle layer. And now let's talk a little bit about our moss. Moss have no vascular tissue to move water up from the soil. They absorb water through their cells in their entire plant, so they don't have true vascular tissue. But here's a little bit we talked about in lecture. We've got the moss gametophyte generation, which you know is the predominant generation in bryophytes, and then you've got the sporophyte, which looks like a capsule. And here's an awesome set of different types of moss that our greenhouse manager, Paul, set up for us, and you can see there's different stages. Most of them are in the gametophyte generation, and then there are some sporophytes. You can see these cool capsules. So that's what it really looks like in person. Okay, so now we're moving on from bryophytes to ferns and fern allies, and we're going to start seeing things like vascular tissue. So ferns evolved about 359 million years ago. They contain vascular tissue, xylem for moving water, and phloem for moving sucrose. And they have leaves, and the leaves are called fronds. So here's things that we talked about when we talked about ferns. You've got your sporangia. Inside the sporangia are the spores, and here's what a germinating spore would look like. And here's thallus, prothallus, which is the hermaphroditic gametophyte. And so it's hermaphroditic, which means it's got both the archegonium and the antheridium, and it's got these rhizoids, which are like root-like appendages. And now we're going to go through a couple of really cool-looking ferns that Paul has put out for us today. We've got our holly fern, and we're going to look at underneath and look at the different patches of sori. So here you can see the sori, this one's sort of willy-nilly all over, but there's some really cool ones that we'll show you in a second. Here's a rabbit's foot fern. You can see this part here makes it look like a rabbit foot. And then you can see here the sori are kind of in a more line pattern throughout the bottom of the frond. Then we've got an Australian tree fern, and the sori look like this. In this awesome bird's nest fern, and I really love the pattern of the sori under here. These are really cool. And the maidenhair fern. This is a really big maidenhair fern. You might see small ones around, but this is the big one. And this, you can see the sori arranged sort of on the outside edges. Okay, so we've talked about how ferns and fern allies have vascular tissue and leaves. And now we are going to go to the next step of evolution, which would be starting with the gymnosperms. And the big thing that you're seeing here is that even though there was vascular tissue in the ferns, we're going to start seeing seed generation. So gymnosperms are where we're going to start seeing our seeds, but these seeds are what are called naked seeds. So gymnosperm, it means naked seed. So they don't have their seeds encased in fruit, but they're just naked. You can see here is an actual picture of some seeds, and they've got these wings on them, which allow them to be dispersed by the wind. And we talked about the bracts of the female cone where the seeds are. So this is a bunch of different types of cool female cones. And then you get sort of, these are big, and then you get the small little male cones. And remember that this is also where the male gametophyte is actually just pollen. So you've got the pollen here with the gymnosperms and the naked seeds. Here's some cool gymnosperm needles, which are actually the leaves of the gymnosperm. And it says a cool little fact here that the conifers were probably the main food of herbivorous dinosaurs. And then you'll see here that the dominant generation is the sporophyte generation, similar to the ferns. So with the ferns, you're starting to see more dominant sporophyte generation, and that's going to last throughout the evolutionary scale. Okay, now we're going to our last step up on the evolutionary scale, and we're getting to our angiosperms. So angiosperms evolved about 160 million years ago, and they have beautiful flowers. The sporophyte is again the dominant life cycle, and they have xylem and phloem. But the most interesting thing here is the development of fruit. So you've got your flower and your ovary, and inside the ovary is an ovule, and that is going to eventually become the seed, and then the ovary is going to ripen and form the fruit. So when you move from gymnosperm to angiosperm, you have the development of fruit. Now let's just do a little bit of a review again, starting with the green algae. Then you've got your development of the cuticle layer, and you've got the dominant life cycle part of the bryophyte is going to be the gymnosperm generation. Then we're moving up to ferns, and you have xylem and phloem and true leaves, and you have spores. So no seeds yet, just spores. Then we're moving on to the gymnosperms, and we're just going to have the seeds. They're naked this time. They're just gymnosperms, no development of the ovary yet. And the dominant and the gametophyte of the conifer is the pollen grain. And that is also true about angiosperms, but you start having the development of fruit. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm sending you all this information, these placards here that will have all this information, so you can look at this and let your TA or me know if you have any questions. All right, thanks, bye.